Hi and welcome to this session on focused creativity in the classroom with Apple and Jamf. My name is Mathew Pullen. I am a senior lecturer in initial teacher education at the University of South Wales. As well as that, I support schools across the country and wider afield with their adoption and integration of technology to help make a difference in the lives of children. Now, what is creativity in learning? We might hear it quite a lot discussed. We might see examples of it on social media, etc. But for me, creativity goes a little bit deeper than just what is created as a result for students. And we know from a recent Gallup survey that looked at creativity in learning that it can produce really positive critical outcomes for our students that can then be enhanced even further if we utilize the full potential for technology. And we've probably seen over the last couple of years, schools and teachers have really embraced the idea of creative teaching, but often fail to harness the full potential of technology in the classroom, often using it just as a replication of the things that you might have done if you were still face to face. Now, when we look at Apple technology, we certainly have a choice in how our learners can share their knowledge. We know that with a mobile device such as an iPad, we have the power to utilize the drawing tools. Now, this could be to replicate handwriting on the device, but also changes the way that you interact with the device. No longer do we have to take written notes in the form of writing freehand all of the things that might be shared with you. We can adopt new approaches such as sketchnoting to really allow students to express themselves in new ways. And when we look at the research around sketchnoting, we know there's emerging evidence that starts to suggest that students that use visuals as well as words can start to understand things in a deeper way. It helps with memory recall, but further than that, it helps with memory transfer. And then when we look at the fact that all the devices have a microphone on it, we start to unlock the opportunity for students to really share their creative thoughts, removing the barriers of having to type or write everything that we're thinking and just simply share what we're thinking by saying it out loud. And when we build that into our curriculum, build it into our lesson planning, we start to unlock the real potential of our students that might have otherwise had a barrier. Initially, we might have thought that this was a tool for those students that may have had special educational needs within the classroom. But actually, many students just struggle to get things out of their mind. If we take our youngest learners, for example, our 4-year-olds in the classroom or even younger than that, they've got massive potential for sharing stories and creative ideas. But it's all lost because how do we evidence it? We wait until they can write, we develop their writing skills, and by that point, we've probably lost all of that passion and creativity that many of those students had. Now, not taking away from all of those things, we can still use text on the device, either through using the virtual keyboard on the screen or thinking about how we might use additional keyboards that attach to our devices. If you really need to have that additional content on the device, you have that power. But let's not forget that when we utilize the keyboard, we equally have the emoji keyboard. And I've seen many schools and students start to explore the role of emojis in expressing understanding and being creative with what they're trying to put across. It can be great for social and emotional learning for many students. And the one thing that's probably the biggest impact for me in my time using technology is the fact that we have a camera. And the camera really changes how you approach things in your classroom. Either through taking photos or using the video and being able to capture your voice alongside that, you start to see learning as the students see it for themselves. Now, this could be in the form of exploring the world around them and taking pictures of what they see and using it to become critical, or it could simply be a reflection on a task that they've done, opening the camera up and talking about what they've done and sharing that back to the teacher. There's so many possibilities to allow students to interact in different ways. For me, it was actually the way I got into using mobile technology and seeing the real potential in the first place. As a PE teacher in a previous life, I started to see how technology could maybe change how disengaged students saw themselves in lessons. No longer did they need to rely on me giving them feedback on whether they were any good and what they'd done and how they could improve. They were able to film themselves and watch for themselves and unpick the things that they knew they needed to develop further. It changes the aspect in the classroom from the teacher being the person who tells everyone what to do to empowering students to think for themselves and start to decide what they want to do to improve and noticing the things that they are good at, not just the things that they might be not so good at. And then finally, let's not take away from the fact it's still a tool which enables us to access documents, sharing of content, rich creative stuff, all culminating all of these tools together, allowing students to have a massive choice in how they demonstrate knowledge and understanding. Now, when we look at the top 10 skills required by the industry, we start to unpick a lot of these things are things we really need to be teaching our students. This information is from the Future of Jobs report from the World Economic Forum, and it talks about these top 10 skills that students are going to need. And when we look at this in more detail, we notice that things like creativity, originality, analytical thinking, as well as the obvious things around technology use and design, being really, really important. And if we drill right into this idea of creativity and originality, how are we allowing students to do those things when we have a more structured, rigid approach? Writing in books, for example, doesn't really allow for a huge amount of creativity. It allows one input method. Now that could be, I suppose, adapted through either drawing or using text, but it's still limited to just that information being placed on paper. If we add in the ability of using laptops, for example, then we can start to think about new opportunities that might exist for us. We could create videos, we can utilize video functionality and edit those things. But then when we add in this idea of utilizing technology that's mobile, the world around us becomes that creative environment. We don't have to be sat at desks anymore, and we can utilize the things around us to inspire us, to allow us to be analytical and innovative in the things that we're doing. When we think about the ability to take photos of the world around us and draw directly over the top and think about what we would like to see instead, we're interacting with that world, being analytical about it, and then being creative and original with what we might come up with as a result. So when we think about how we can do this for our students, how does Jamf support us in some of this? Because providing students with unlimited choice can actually be quite daunting. It provides distractions for students. There's so many options that actually, do we waste time filtering down to that single option that we want? We want to provide students to our students at the same time as limiting those distractions. And we still need to scaffold that learning for all of our students. And this is really critical when we start to think about how we use technology in the classroom. Is it an open box where it's a free-for-all and people can do whatever they want? Or do we limit it down to specific things and tell students this is how you're going to be creative? Or maybe there's something in between those two. This is Jamf Teacher. You may have seen this before, but I just wanted to show you a quick demonstration. As the teacher, I have control of the students, and I can set specific tasks to allow them access to certain apps on their device. Here, this could be a creative challenge, or I want them to have access to a range of tools that may allow them to be creative. Things like clips and Keynote, pages, choices of how they might want to demonstrate their learning to everybody around them. When I tap apply, it then produces that on their device. And you can see on the student device, their device now has been stripped of many of those apps, leaving them still with the choice of applications that they might want to use. Now, this is really important because I want to scaffold the learning. I want students to have a range of tools for them to utilize. But at the same time, I need to know that I'm not overwhelming those students with a whole range of choice. Plus, on our devices, there may be many things there that could act as a distraction for them. They may see a different app and start to explore that application when it's not really relevant to the task that they've been given. So for me, Jamf Teacher absolutely gives me control and understanding of the range of things that my students can do in the classroom that changes their approach. And then let's consider, how does this impact on learning? We want students to showcase their knowledge, not simply their writing skills. I know I talk to my students a lot about the idea of, what are we actually assessing in the classroom? We talk about success criteria, and very rarely in the success criteria does it say the ability to write. But all the time, students' outcomes are judged by what they can write on paper. Now, I'm not saying that writing is not an important skill, but it is a skill that allows students to demonstrate knowledge and understanding. When we provide students with a range of tools through using the camera, being able to draw, being able to be creative with video, we allow our students to have this creative expression in their learning. Now, beyond that, it also removes the barriers to learning. And many barriers that we see are placed there because of the design of our learning tasks in the first place. We ask students to discuss and share with us their knowledge about volcanoes or erosion of soil, and then we ask them to write it down. But what if those students know an awful lot of detail, but the barrier to them is that they can't write? Maybe the barrier is because of a lack of understanding of the English language when it comes to writing. Maybe it's due to an additional learning need, such as dyslexia. And when we remove those barriers, we actually start to see that students know an awful lot more. I'm sure you can think for yourselves of times when you've had a great idea, but you just can't get it down onto paper. You just can't take this visual idea in your mind and produce it in a way that's completely different using just text. But maybe you could sketch out that idea, and maybe using your voice alongside that sketch might bring it to life and actually help somebody else understand what you're trying to explain. And when we do that, we start to see the potential in our learners, and we also get them to see the potential in themselves. Now, I do get challenged on this quite a lot. People will ask me a lot about, exams, and exams require us to do handwriting, and until the exams change, then we need to really make sure that students can write. And although I completely accept that as an argument, my comeback is usually around the fact that unless a student has something to write about, what is the reason for them to worry too much about handwriting? And I think that if we can show our students success and that they have the capability to demonstrate their knowledge in great ways, it gives them the reason to develop their handwriting skills. Because once you know what to write about, it's a lot easier to write the end result. So let's take a look at just some examples here. There's a range of images here of activities that I've done with students in my own teaching, as well as supporting schools. In the top left, students utilising Lego tools on their iPads, being able to be creative with the building of toys and using the iPad to support that through the build process, but then equally taking it further in terms of that creativity, using coding to bring things to life that they ordinarily would play with in their own time. You'll notice students using the camera a lot. Again, like I said, it opens up that window to the world, allowing students to be able to see so much more and explore things. It's easy to look out of a window and see a view, but when you look at it through a camera and you're tasked with actually taking a photo, you look for so many different things in that window. And that's just a really simple activity that doesn't really require a huge amount of activity. It just bases itself on our just innate desire to explore things. As individuals, we are naturally curious, but when we stare out of a window, what are we focused on? The iPad and its camera just focuses our attention on specific things, and that starts to develop this critical approach to things that we may not have ever noticed before. In the bottom left, we can see students here designing their own applications. This is an app prototype activity based on Keynote on the iPad, utilising the functions such as hyperlinks to allow students to interact with the presentation in different ways to the just standard linear approach. And this reflects the world around them. We know that the world we live in is full of applications, from our TVs to our smartphones to our tablets, even to fridges these days. And students know that apps kind of drive a lot of the things that we're doing. And in this activity, students get to make their own applications. They get to delve deeper into how these things work. And it's not that all of our students are going to become app developers, but they could become app developers. At the moment, our students aren't all going to become mathematicians, but we still teach them all of those skills within maths. And when we look back at those top 10 skills required for the workplace in just 2025, we can see that coding and an understanding of logic and those sorts of ideas are really important. We also see students playing around with green screen. Now, this is a great way for students to express themselves in new ways, but also it takes this idea of changing the environment around you, taking you to places that allow you to be critical, allow you to be innovative, allow you to think differently. Now, for many of our learners, they may not get the opportunity to actually visit these places. So giving them an appreciation of what it might be to be there can unlock the opportunities. I know for one, working in inner city Bristol for a long time, many of my students never even considered leaving Bristol, for example. And being able to take them to a new location suddenly gives them that inspiration to maybe try something different, to see the world as it really is and the vast opportunities within it. And then finally, something which is fairly new, and hopefully you can pick this out in the picture, this is augmented reality. And again, building on that idea of bringing something new into your world, giving students the opportunity to explore things that realistically you can't just go and explore. In this example here, the student is building their own space environment where they can explore the planets and maybe how they rotate around each other. Now that again allows students to delve deeper into their connection to the world that they're thinking about creating in this augmented environment. We can give them flat three-dimensional pictures of solar systems, but actually, if we allow students to interact and move around and start to tell stories, it becomes a more memorable experience. And my final point is around unlocking potential. Students have unlimited potential. It's only ever capped by the opportunities that we provide them in the classroom. And we want students to be able to see that anything is possible. And although this is scary for many, and as a teacher of newly qualified teachers in the workplace, I see the students struggle with this idea of young learners knowing more than they do. But actually I see that as an opportunity to allow that creativity to flow in partnership with our learners. And we always have those tools to rely on that allow us to scaffold the learning in specific ways, so we can focus attention where attention is needed and allow our students to really succeed in a way that works best for them. We are, after all, as unique as our fingerprints. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you've enjoyed this discussion today.